Now let's take a look at a very detailed guide, a report in these slides. There are 4 or 5 slides, so you can clearly understand the purchasing process in SAP. So what is it that we do in SAP? That is the task that you absolutely must carry out. The purchasing area, procurement, the purchasing specialist are from creating a purchase request to inventory management and supplier evaluation. That is fundamental. So now let's go step by step through the SAP transactions. There are several, but here I will tell you the ones you absolutely need to know and use every day, and their impact on supply chain management. All right, here we can see the basic flow of the purchasing process is the purchase requisition. A purchase requisition is created using transaction M51N for materials or services, starting services or initiating the procurement process depending on whether it's materials or services. But that's the transaction you need to use. Then the second step is approval. This is the approval of that purchase requisition using transaction ME54N by an authorized person to ensure compliance with the budget and company policies. There will always be an immediate superior, usually your boss, who approves the purchase requisition. Well, that depends on the policies and how the purchasing procedure is set up in your company. Each company has its own policy and it may be a little different, but generally it's as I'm describing it to you. The next point, after the purchase requisition, it gets approved. And what do you have to do? Create the purchase order with which transaction? ME21N. So with the ME21N transaction, you proceed. The purchase order specifying the terms agreed with the supplier. Okay, so what do we have? The approval of that purchase order. The purchase order must be approved through transaction M28 or it can be M29N before being sent to the supplier according to company policy. What does it mean? You generate the purchase order and do not send it to the supplier until it is approved, generally by an immediate supervisor, your supervisor. Sometimes it happens that they don't approve it right away, so you have to send them an email or write to them on Teams so they approve that purchase order and you can send it to the supplier. All right? Once it is approved, it is sent to the supplier, and the next step, what is it? Receipt of the goods. This is when we receive the merchandise from that purchase order. A good receipt is recorded using the MIGO transaction when the supplier delivers the goods, and in this way, we update the inventory. All right, now we're talking about materials. If it's services, we record the services with the service entry sheet, which is the ML81N transaction. Then once you create the service entry sheet, it must be approved using the ML85N transaction before payment. That is generally done by a superior of yours. That's why I repeat again. It depends on the company's policy. All right, so I'll repeat again. There are several transactions I'm showing which are the most well-known, the ones we most commonly use throughout the entire supply chain area. For creation and management, ME54N could be ME51N, where you can see the entire purchase requisition. After the purchase requisition, your superior approves it through ME54N. Once that purchase requisition is approved, the purchase order is created using ME21N. Then that purchase order is approved through ME29N or ME21N. And once it's approved, it is sent to the supplier. Then comes the receipt and service, either through the friend in goods receipt or ML81N for service entry. Then that service entry is approved through ML85, which is usually done by a superior. All right, what else? Here we see the topic of quotations. You can use transaction M41 for quotations. That is, you receive the quotations and can enter the prices from those suppliers into SAP. Then with M47 as well, which allows you to compare prices across all the offers you receive from suppliers. All those quotations can be entered into SAP using these two transactions. And what else? And then we can view, using the ME transaction 23N, the purchase order display. Let's continue. Next slide. Integration of inventory management. That is the integration we have in inventory. This is what I'm talking about now. It's MIGO that updates inventory levels and facilitates reconciliation between the purchase order, what we receive through the MIGO transaction, and the invoice. Another integration we have is MIRO. What does MIRO do? MIRO verifies invoices by comparing them with the purchase order and the goods receipt. Then we have the MB52 transaction. It allows you to see the current stock levels in different warehouses. This transaction is excellent. I use it every day. And we can also see the MB1B transaction, which facilitates inventory transfers between locations. Between different locations that you have, you can see those movements. All right, let's continue. Here, analysis report. Here we can visualize using the M2N transaction, which allows you to review purchase orders based on various criteria. This makes it easier to identify purchase order patterns and allows for deeper analysis. Beyond M2N, there are also other transactions that I use, like M2L and others that you'll see in this course, which are very good for generating reports and viewing purchase orders. Materials, costs, and more. Supplier evaluation. We also have the ME6X transaction that allows us to evaluate the performance of suppliers based on quality, delivery time, and cost. Helps the company make informed decisions about future supplier partnerships. Okay, let's continue. Next slide. Benefits for the supply chain. What are the benefits? Real-time data. What does it do to you? Provides real-time updates on inventory levels and purchase order status. This allows you to make informed decisions without delay. Improves relationships with suppliers and facilitates management in relationships through purchase requests, portals with suppliers that may have, thus reducing the risk of supply interruptions. What is the idea? The idea is that there is no discontinuity of materials or services, and that the company's activities continue. That's fundamental, guys. Better inventory control. The use of MIRO, for example, the MIRO transaction, MB52 transaction, improves inventory visibility and accurate stock management, reducing the chances of running out of stock. Or if we have excess inventory, because we can have excess inventory, that needs to be corrected. All right, so all these points we are going to cover in all the tutorials. We will carefully go through it step by step, but I want to explain to you in a more general way the essential roles, the critical functions that you should be performing and executing. 100% in SAP. In other words, all these comments I made about these transactions, you need to know how to use them, and it's something you should be doing every day. All right? What about this tool? This SAP tool nowadays is already globalized. It's comprehensive. It covers everything from the initial request to the final payment and inventory management. What else does this transaction do? It allows companies to improve visibility in the supply chain, control costs, and optimize inventory. By integrating all these processes, organizations can achieve greater effectiveness and efficiency in their purchasing operations. What they do results in more effective supply chain management and improves relationships with suppliers. That's why you need to know this very well. Thank you. Using these transactions, the reports, the transactions you use in SAP are immediate. You do them right away. If your supervisor tells you, "Can you generate such and such report for me, Pablo?" No problem. You go into SAP, run the report, and export it to Excel if you want, which makes it much easier to analyze later, right? But in SAP, you have all the information. You just need to know which transaction you need to use to find the information. All right, everyone.